Wolfenstein was the first first-person shooter ever made. Now we have about 30 years later, let's see how well the game still is. Alright, so Wolfenstein, what exactly is it? Well, it's a new game from Bethesda and Machine Games, and it's a first-person shooter that's a bit different than your average shooter. The usual Wolfenstein games have very heavy twitch mechanics, you can hold as many guns as you want, not a big emphasis on story, and you just go around and kill fuck tons of Nazis, which is fucking awesome in my opinion. But the new Wolfenstein takes some risks, which I like. Now let's talk about what's good about this game. Now, as far as honoring the old games, this game does a few things very well. In all the old Wolfenstein games, each level was designed very differently, so when going back and playing the game, you could easily say like, oh, my favorite level was this one, or I liked that one a lot. It's not like Halo or Call of Duty where there's a lot of levels that cover one event. In these games, one level is very long, and it'll cover one environment, have certain game mechanics for each one. And this game does that very well. The moon-based level at the very end of the game, spoiler alert, is very different and much more memorable in certain aspects than the train section in the earlier parts of the games. So how is the gameplay? Well, it's not like usual Wolfenstein. It's not as fast. There's a big emphasis, on taking cover and aiming shots well, but there's still lots of guns. You can have as many as you want, and if you really want to play like a complete dumbass and just run around, you could, possibly. You could survive if you're a pro at this game, but it is not the easiest game. It's actually quite challenging at certain parts. Now, the gameplay is very good though. The graphics, they're not bad. I'm not going to judge it for that. I don't think graphics really should be applied into a game's score, but the graphics are great, but the gameplay is fucking amazing. You can dual wield most weapons, like light machine guns. You want to take some LMGs and dual wield them? Fine, do it. You can put a rocket launcher on an assault rifle. You can take a laser cutting tool, make it into a railgun. There's all kinds of awesome shit. You can detach turrets from walls, from wall-mounted areas. It's really, really fun. The gameplay is absolutely incredible. But this game is different because it has a big focus on story and world design, which it does really well. The story is actually pretty interesting, and a lot of the characters in the game, I remember. And I played this game over the weekend, and I gotta say, this game has a lot of really interesting characters. Now, the story goes about that it's in the 1960s, and the Nazis won World War II. And you play as a guy named B.J. Blazkowicz, who is the hero of the other Wolfenstein games. And you wake up from a coma 20 years after 1944 or 1945, and after being hit in the head with some shrapnel, in an attempt to kill this one general named General Deathshead, who's still alive because the mission failed. So you wake up in an asylum, and now you're in a world controlled by the Nazis. And it's actually very cool because the Nazis have all kinds of cool technology. It almost looks like you're in a Cold War setting, which is really interesting, and the way it's done is very good. Now, like the older Wolfenstein games, there's a big focus on some weird experiments Nazis were doing. It's not as much about, crazy monsters. Probably what's one of the best Wolfenstein games, called Return the Castle Wolfenstein. A lot of the game you spend fighting these weird zombie-like things, who are created by this one general named General Himmler. In this game, Deathshead makes a lot of machines and a lot of robots. And there's going to be a lot of big epic fights with giant mechs and whatever. And this game has a lot of that. This game, it takes itself very seriously, but it's also just really fun, which is really good. Now, as far as any of the drawbacks of the game goes, that's kind of one of them. It takes itself really seriously, but then in gameplay itself, it still feels like a Twitch shooter. It's a little bit slower than most Twitch shooters, but it still feels like, you're laying down heavy fire, and you're just a total badass, killing tons of Nazis. You're never aided by any teammates, except for maybe once throughout the entire game. You're alone, in all kinds of different areas, killing all the Nazis you see. So it's still cartoonish in that aspect, but it's also more serious and more tone-heavy than other games. Now, I'd say that this is definitely, I'm 14, and this is definitely an adult game. I'm not saying that, kids shouldn't play it, but, it's, this game, it's really, it's intense. I'm gonna say that. If you're, the kind of person who's, has trouble, watching Call of Duty, don't play this game. It's insanely gory. That's one of the best parts of the game, just the mass amounts of gore, as you can see right now. And, so if you get bothered by violence, I would not suggest this game. But, if you're not very squeamish, definitely play it. It's a lot of fun. I'd give it an 8, probably just because the story and gameplay is great, but the whole thing with how it's kind of taking itself too seriously bothered me at times, and also It's trying to be a twitch shooter, but you still move slow. You know, like you can die pretty easily. And I don't think difficulties are anything bad about the game. It's just that it's kind of trying to be a modern shooter and a twitch shooter, which makes for some weird janky parts of the game. But besides that, this game is fucking amazing. So I would highly recommend you go play it. And this has been Left Click. I'm a huge fan of the Wolfenstein series. Return of the Castle Wolfenstein is one of my favorite games of all time, and you should play that too. But this game, it's really good, and I would suggest you play it. I played it on Xbox 360, and I had no problems, no graphic errors, no frame rate issues, and I'm sure on next gen it's even better, and PC. Alright guys, it's been Left Click. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.